Hey guys, it's John and Shannon with That DIY Couple, and today we're talking about the top mistakes that we see in college admissions essays. So Shannon and I are both graduates of Yale University, and I went to Cornell Law School. Shannon went to Michigan Law School. I have a JD and an LLM, and I've also been volunteering as a Yale interviewer for the past 10 years or so. What we've also done in that time period is review college essays for people that are applying to college. And in doing that, talking to kids that are applying to college, working with kids who are applying to college, I see a lot of common mistakes that I think make a pretty poor essay and are easily changeable. So today we're going to talk about how you can avoid those and what we think makes a good college essay. So the top mistake that I see all the time in college essays is that the essay isn't actually about you as the applicant. So very big picture, a college essay, the point of the essay is to convey things about you that might not otherwise be conveyable in other forms of your application. So if you think what goes in your application, well, you have college, you have recommendations from probably your teachers or other people. So those are going to say things about you. You have the classes that you've taken. That's going to say things about you. You might have a resume, depending on what you're doing or how you're applying. That's going to say things about what you do and what you're involved in. So in the essay, what you don't want to do is say, oh, by the way, I took all these classes, or I did all these things over the summer that are apparent in other places in my application. Because guess what? If you submit your transcript, which you probably did, all that information is already there. So if you're thinking about an essay topic, make sure it's a topic that is something not conveyable through any other means in your application material. I see this all the time. People talk about a favorite class or maybe a favorite trip or something like that. That's very apparent.
A sport or a hobby or an
That's very apparent in other parts of their application. And you might have a unique take on that, which might be important, but simply the fact that you did that activity or you took that class is not going to be a great topic for an essay because you can already get that information from other parts of your application material.
And I think similar to that, you don't want your essay to be just, it's important to talk about things that are important to you. So it's not that there can't be overlap. It's not like you can't talk about your main sport, which is the most important thing in your life, because that's elsewhere going to be mentioned. But what you don't want is like a long description of you playing the sport that doesn't say anything about you and your relationship to it, or a long description of where you went in XYZ country over the summer, which ostensibly changed your life, but we don't focus at all on the life-changing aspect, and you just focus about what you actually did. This is not a descriptive essay. This is a personal essay that has to have a lot of self-reflection, and it's got to tell me something about you as a human being, not just what you did, what you learned, where you went.
Yeah, so that leads into my second most common error that I see in essays, which is that essays that are well written but actually don't convey any information. So a big mistake or misunderstanding about the college essay process is that the essay has to be really well written. So it has to use really great vocabulary and flowery language and be kind of like a fiction novel or something like that. A lot of essays that I've read have vocabulary that I would be amazed at even me using in an essay, let alone like a 17-year-old applying to college, but it's really not telling me anything. So colleges don't really care how well written your essay is. It's not an audition for you to being, a great author or whatever. Yes, obviously, if you have grammatical errors and spelling errors, or your vocabulary is very bad, that's going to be confusing and take away from the point of the essay. But I can read an essay that might be written, even with the vocabulary of like a ninth grader, that could be fantastic if it conveys the information that I want to convey. So don't get confused about thinking that the essay is an example for you to showcase your super flowery language and amazing writing skills. If you don't actually convey something that I'm interested in reading, then it's not going to be a great essay.
And what we're interested in reading is about you. So it's, how did you grow as a human being as a result of XYZ experience? And what did it mean to you? So your essay needs to have a natural character arc where you describe how when you were 14 you were really shy and introverted, and then you had this amazing experience hosting an exchange student, and how maybe there's a little bit of a description there that captures the imagination as to what that interaction was like. And there's a thought, what did you learn and where did you come out on the other side of it?
Yeah, I think that leads into my third point, which is maybe one of the most important points, is that your personal essay has to be personal. So notwithstanding the fact that it should be on a topic or about something that isn't conveyed elsewhere in your application, and that the quality of the writing really doesn't matter that much, all the time I'll read essays that are well written and about an interesting topic, but don't actually tell me anything about you as a person. They'll just be a recounting of facts that happened, or maybe things that some other person did. So a common essay that I'll read is something about a friend or a teacher or a parent, how they did something for the student, for the applicant. And that's a great personal essay about that other person. But unless you convey how that other person's actions impacted you, it doesn't really tell me anything about you at all. If I'm reading a personal essay, whatever the essay prompt is, so some essay prompts will be very vague. They'll say write about a topic that's important to you. They'll say write about a topic that you don't think your application can be complete without, something like that. Whatever the essay topic is, what they're really trying to get is, I want to learn about you as a person. You need to talk about you and yourself. And that doesn't mean necessarily saying, I am so great, I thought about this, I did that, but it means describing how you interacted with, or were influenced by, or changed by, or why you did a certain action, whatever. It's all about you. And how you convey that in a way that isn't simply stating like, I felt this way, I thought this, I did that, is the challenge of the essay. But so many times I read an essay where there's maybe one sentence or two sentences in the entire essay about how this huge topic actually relates to them, or how it changed their lives, or whatever. And those are very, not good essays, because I've read the essay and all I've gotten from it is, well, I've gotten some facts that happened to this person, which are kind of interesting, I suppose. But how that relates to who they are as a person, besides the fact that they experienced a thing, I don't know. You can imagine one way that I like to think about it is write an essay that only you can write. So say something bad happened to your life. Say you had a family member who had a bad illness, like maybe your parent had cancer, hypothetically, right? That's not a great thing to happen as a kid growing up. But the fact that happened is only one aspect of the story. How did the fact that happened influence you? Did it make you upset? Did it make you anxious? Did it change the way that you had a relationship with this person who had cancer? Did it change how you grew up? Does it change how you think about life now? Does it influence what you want to study? Do you not want to do something? Do you want to do something? I don't know what that answer is. Anybody could write an essay about you and your mom having cancer, but only you can write an essay about how that fact influenced your life. That's the essay that I want to read. And oftentimes I read essays where anybody could have written about you and your mom having cancer. I'm not saying that that's not interesting and not important to you, but what I'm interested in is, how did that actually influence your life? How did it change you? How did it change your thought process? What are you going to do about it going forward?
I think another tip is to not worry so much about the topic, particularly because these are personal essays. You don't have to stress about, is this topic going to sound good? Is it going to sound interesting? What's important is it interesting to you? So you could write an essay, like an example is that I wrote an essay about this major life-changing experience that I had while studying abroad in Spain, because it was so momentous in my life. But you could also write an essay like you did about a bagpipe, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what does this bagpipe mean? Because he played the bagpipes in his life. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to focus so much on the topic as, like John said, how it influenced you. Don't get bogged down in that. Choose something that in your heart and in your gut, you're like, this resonates with me. This is important to me. And don't worry about whether or not you think it's going to be important to somebody else, or if it makes you look good. Which ties into another tip, which is, don't try to paint your life and your accomplishments in this ultra rosy, super competitive, I'm the best, I'm amazing thing. It's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to be flawed, and it's okay to talk about those things. And in particular, I see applicants who have had really hard lives and really bad things happen to them not write about those things in their essays, which is the biggest mistake in the world. Because if you have a unique story, if you have a sob story where you are like the first person in your entire family to go to college and your life has been a struggle and you've had to fight for every single thing that you have in this life, or if you have been caring for an ailing parent during high school when your friends were outside playing, I don't necessarily want to hear about how much you love the violin in the entire essay. I also want to hear about your struggle and how your struggle changed you. Because guess what? Colleges like that. They want people who have some grit. They want people who haven't had life handed to them on a platter.
But having said that, I would say in an essay, make sure that you're talking about one topic. So another common mistake that I see in essays is that people will try to jam a bunch of stuff into the essay because they think that it's interesting. So they might say, oh, they use the theme that I said before. I had a really hard time growing up. My parents were sick. And I'm also, a champion cross-country runner. It's like, okay, well, those are interesting things on itself, but how do those relate to each other? Like, how are those related? Maybe they are related.
And there's a way to weave that together, which is like, I'm sitting there on the cross-country course and I'm thinking about my mom who's dying and I'm running for her, right? Like, there's a way, if they actually are related, there's a way to weave them together.
But if not, it just reads like saying, hey, here's a list of my accomplishments that I want you to know, or the things about me.
Right,
I'm just
going to
write an essay.
Look at the rest of my
I'm going to write an essay to like put them together. That's not a great essay.
Right.
So
that's a good point.
The topics of the essays, as Shannon was saying before, are important, but they're not super sitting in a room. You might think, oh, I'm going to write an essay. For example, as Shannon mentioned, my essay, I wrote an essay to colleges about the bagpipes, and it's a specific bagpipe. And I think sitting in a room, abstractly, you might say, that's not that interesting of a topic because nobody plays the bagpipes. Nobody cares about a specific bagpipe. How is that an interesting topic for somebody to read? But it was an effective essay and an interesting essay because of my take on it and because of how passionate I was about that topic. So if you find a topic that you're really passionate about, whether it be cosplaying at a convention, playing a video game, a trip that you took, a family member, an experience that you had, even if it's really obscure, if you're passionate about it and you write an essay consistent with some of the tips that we gave you, it'll be an interesting essay. I've also read essays conversely about really crazy things that people have done, like traveling to sub-Saharan Africa to volunteer, which is an insane thing to do as a high school student, that are really not very interesting because it's just a recounting of the facts that they did when they were in sub-Saharan Africa. And again, that sort of information, anybody could write that essay. Your friend could write an essay about what you did in sub-Saharan Africa, but how that impacted you and how that changed you is what I want to read about. And maybe the better essay there is one specific thing you did in sub-Saharan Africa, or your decision to go to sub-Saharan Africa, or a person that you met in sub-Saharan Africa, how they had an impact on you. I think that's a really cool topic. But the fact that you went to sub-Saharan Africa, besides just saying, okay, cool, I need to learn more about how that impacted you. I don't care about the facts that you did it. I want to learn more about how that impacted you and how it changed you.
And I'll add that I want to know, how does it impact your future plans? Was this life-changing thing, did it change the sort of trajectory of what you thought you wanted to study? And are you going to want to take other classes at this university that are related to this major life change? Which gets to another point, which is that your essays are a part of your broader application, and you need to be presenting a coherent and consistent narrative about who you are as a human being. And so I'm looking at your essays, and I'm looking at your grades, and I'm looking at your course schedule, and I'm looking at your extracurriculars, all as part of a complete package. And so if I see that you are a extraordinary student in science and math, and that you have average grades in English and, literature and languages, but then I have this, essay about how important it was for you to read Macbeth and how this changed your life. But after that alleged experience, you never took another Shakespeare class, or you never spent any time, you didn't take AP English. I'm going to be like, this just looks like you're trying to balance your application, and it doesn't look like an accurate and truthful reflection of who you are as a human being. And maybe the better choice there is to say, like, this is why I love science. Maybe you can maybe you can write something more passionate about that
I
topic.
see it a lot, actually, kind of the opposite, where a student will say, I'm really interested in STEM, which is kind of like a buzzword now, like science, technology, math. I love that. And then you look at their grades, and they get really bad grades in science and math, and they get great grades in history and
English.
English.
Or they're not loading up on all the science
right,
APs.
or they've taken, they say, like, I love physics, but they've only taken one physics course, or I love chemistry, but now they're taking AP US History and AP English. So it's like, well, okay, I mean, you might love chemistry, but like, how does that correspond with the rest? Like, you almost have to have an explanation as to say,
right.
I love chemistry, but just so you know, I didn't take any chemistry courses. Why? You know, like,
so don't write an essay about how amazing your experience was on the JV soccer team if you didn't continue playing soccer the next year, for example.
I mean, you could write that essay, but you'd have to specifically say how it impacted your life, how it changed your life, or whatever. And I don't want to take away from that essay that I super love soccer, right? If you write an essay about JV soccer and then never played soccer again, it would have to be something where I take away the conclusion that, I learned something interesting about you. But probably that interesting thing isn't, I love soccer, that's my passion in life. Because then I'll say, well, why didn't you play varsity soccer?
Right.
So, you know, one concluding thought to all this discussion is that it's important to consider your application through the eyes of someone that you've never met. That's an admissions officer. And depending on the school that you apply to, the admissions officer is not going to spend a ton of time getting to know you through your application materials. I mean, we're talking about a matter of minutes often. So if what you are conveying to the admissions officer doesn't make sense, like as Shannon said, you talk about a passion for a topic, but then don't show that you have that passion anywhere else in your application materials or in your recommendations or whatever, or you write an essay that's very confusing to understand, or you present material that just doesn't jive together, the admissions officer is not going to sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to read this essay 4 more times and delve through the application material to understand this person. They're going to say, look, I don't really get it, and I'm going to move on, probably. So think about how your essays and the rest of your application materials are going to be conveyed to an admissions officer who is going through thousands of applicants through the admission cycle, hundreds per day maybe. He's going to spend a couple minutes reading your application and then move on. What are you going to say that makes you stand out and is true to you? So when I edit essays for people, which I do a fair amount, I'll give suggestions and tips, but you know, I very infrequently say, change this sentence to read this, or change this paragraph, it should say this. I'll say, I can't write this paragraph for you. I can't change the sentence for you. I don't know how you interpreted this stuff, but I know that this sentence doesn't do anything for me. This paragraph doesn't mean anything for me because there's something missing. So I'll say, here are suggestions. Here's the direction that I would go. You have to write the essay. Obviously, it's your essay, but it's also your truth. It's your life. So the same scenario that happened to you, that happened to somebody else, that could have a tremendously huge impact, different impact on your life. Again, to say, if you had a parent that went through a health issue, I have no idea how that impacted you. I'm sure it did, but you have to tell me how it impacted you. So, yeah.
I'll add one more thing. And I think another mistake that people make is not taking advantage of all of the available buckets and space for extra essays. So if you can write an essay about why you're choosing a particular school, if you have that option, write that essay. If you don't, it's like the student doesn't really care about the school at all.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a great point. It's a broader theme about, I think when you're 17, you look at these applications and the process, you think, oh, well, it says I can write one essay, so I'm going to write one essay. That's it. Well, the reality is that if there's something really special or unique that you have to convey that for some reason isn't conveyable in any other format, it's okay to submit additional applications to schools. These are human beings that are reading your essay. It's not some some formulaic machine system where if you do anything outside of the rules and the norm, you're automatically excluded from it. I tell college applicants all the time, if you really, 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 really want to get into a good school, assuming that your grades and all these other things are in the ballpark, I bet you can find a way to either get in or get really competitive at that school, whatever it is. If you really, really, really push it, if you exercise all the resources that you can. Talk to people, interview, do everything that you can to become interested in the school. That's going to make a huge difference, even if it's outside the rules of the application process or whatever else. So many times I'll meet with kids and they'll say, my number one dream school, I'd love to go to Yale. I would just love to do that. I say, great. Well, what have you done? What have you learned about Yale? Like, I submitted an application. Like, okay, well, there's so much more you can do, right? Did you talk to anybody who went to Yale? Did you visit Yale? Did you do anything more to express an interest in Yale besides doing that? And oftentimes they'll say no. And the question is, well, that's important, because schools, including Yale, keep track of those things. If you went to Yale and you signed in, your name is going to be in a database that Yale can cross-reference. If you talk to a professor at Yale, you could ask them and say, look, how can I increase my admissions chances? And they might say something. They might say, look, I'll email the admissions office because you came in and saw me and I liked our conversation. I thought you were interesting. That's huge. And you won't know if that's a possibility without trying it.
Correct.
So, as Shannon said, take advantage of all the things that you could do to get into school. They're not within the strict four corners of the Common Application.
And I want to put out a special PSA to please use there's one, what I used to call the sob story essay bracket, which is like, tell us anything else that you think makes you a unique candidate. And it was an opportunity historically to talk about disadvantages, but I think it's kind of morphed into like a more open-ended, tell us something else about yourself. And that was, typically when we were applying, it was like you might talk about growing up, economically disadvantaged or having some sort of disability or having, like growing up figuring out that you were LGBTQ or something like that, something that makes you just a little bit more unique. Even if you're kind of like a plain vanilla privileged person, there might be something that you can include there if you can do it in a way that's not disingenuous. So for me, I have a brother who's multiply handicapped, and I wrote a sort of long and extensive essay about how having a person with just severe disabilities in my life had shaped me as a human being and made me feel more thankful and present for the privileges that I do have. There's things like that, or just unique experiences that can shift your view in that way. One more thing. If you're submitting a paper essay and you're not limited to the word limit, do not go over the word limit. Like, that does not look good. You don't have more to say than anyone else. You can do it within the word limit. And the final thing is not having anyone else review it. So your essay should be reviewed by your parents, your teachers, your friends, like anybody, any smart adult in your life who you can get to give you feedback on this essay, and you should be taking that feedback. Now, you should take it with a grain of salt because this is ultimately your essay and it's your truth and it's your story, but you should be receptive to it. And just because like your guidance counselor or somebody like that tells you that your essay is good doesn't necessarily mean that it's great or that it's perfect. And you should think about, where did my guidance counselor go to school? And do I take...
Well, I would seek out, it's almost like you're doing an experiment, right? And you're trying to invalidate your hypothesis. I would seek out criticism, like negative criticism of your essays. Because the least valuable feedback of your essay, I think, is that, it's great. Because, right. Possibly you wrote the greatest essay ever the first time you wrote it, but most likely you didn't. And you could go to somebody and they could say, I hate this essay, and here's all the things that I don't like about it. And I would take that with a little bit of salt, a grain of salt, and say, I don't know exactly how relevant that feedback is, but there's probably some nugget of truth in there that you could use to improve your essay. So I think when both of us were writing our essays for college, I know I had dozens of people look at my essay, and I think a lot of them said it was great, and a few of them had constructive feedback, and it was hard for me to take because I thought my essay was great. But I incorporated that, and it made a much stronger essay.
My dad recently told me that the first draft of my essays for college were really weird, which I didn't remember, but he told me that. So it's a drafting. It's a process, and seek out the most highly educated people in your network to give you this feedback. Because as you grow older in life, you'll learn that not all advice should be weighted equally, right? So if you're looking to get thin, talk to thin people. If you're looking to get rich, talk to rich people. If you're looking to get into a really good school, try to talk to people who went to really good schools. Like,
Right.
And this is, I guess, an opportunity for us to note that we do provide essay review services, and we will link that in the sidebar if you guys are interested. But I really hope that this video has been helpful for you guys.
I want to say that writing a college essay is really hard. It's very stressful, particularly if you're not in the habit of writing essays like this, which essentially nobody is. It's challenging. It's challenging to share it with other people because it's on a personal topic. It's challenging to get feedback and incorporate that in because you spend a lot of time and effort and emotions and stress, and there's a time limit, and there's a word limit, and there's a this and there's that. So all this is really hard stuff. And
it's such a stressful
even
time of year.
Even incorporating the advice that we have just talked about is really hard, because it's not like you can watch this video and say, oh, I know exactly what to write in my essay, right? So it's a process. It's not. It's intended to be a difficult process because that's part of the admissions process for schools, but it's super worth it to go through it. It's very important. Where you go to school does have an impact on your life. We've talked about this in other videos, and for better or for worse. And if you
but
can,
it's not the be all end all, and everything is going to be okay.
Everything will be okay.
And the cream rises to the top in the workforce.
Sure. So having said all that, good luck. And you'll survive. You'll get through it.
Don't be afraid to brag. Now is the time. Toot your own horn. It is time to put your accomplishments
don't be
first.
modest.
Don't be modest.
Yeah.
But you're gonna be okay. It's all gonna be okay. This is a stressful time of year. If you're a high school senior, it'll be okay, and it'll be over in a few months. You'll get in somewhere. It'll be great.
The hard work that you put in now will pay off. So right now, I think as you were saying to someone we're talking to, life is a marathon. Getting to college is a marathon, but for the next, couple weeks, couple months, it's kind of a sprint. So, get that, work hard and sacrifice to get your applications in and apply where you want to do, and make it the strongest case you can about yourself.
Keep at it, slugger.
And then relax. Enjoy your second semester of your senior year, because that is fun. After you already applied, kind of relax and enjoy life. But best of luck.
Comment down below. Let us know your questions. We are happy to answer them. And let us know if there's things that we didn't answer in this video. We can make another one.
And if you're involved in college admissions, for example, or you're kind of like us, where you went to school, I would love to hear your other tips about the application process, the essay process specifically. But until next time, guys.
Do well and always make things better.